Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber, actually a few subscribers kind of asked this question. I'm going to flip this question in here. This is in the video I did called Stupid and Dangerous Exercises That Bodybuilders Often Do. And he basically is like, look, you told us a lot of this stuff, but stupid things that bodybuilders do with their triceps, so how do you try and train the triceps correctly without injury? I don't understand. You didn't really clarify any of that. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Let's do a little bit of crafting, and let's see if we can remedy that, if I can actually break down for you guys how to train triceps without hurting yourself, what the deal is. Now, the thing that I want people to remember is that kind of the notes from the other thing, the things that causes your tricep tendons to inflame and causes your elbow joints to hurt are usually the tricep movements where you've got your palms down and you're doing this towards your face. This stuff right here, that is how people cause inflammation of their tricep insertions. The tendons on the lateral head, the medial head, and in the elbow joint. That's 90% of the time that's what's causing it. And that's what's causing guys that need to wrap things up or just trying to press excessively heavy weight that they can't handle. It's not about the lockout. So something I keep emphasizing over and over and over. The tricep is designed to lock out. It locks out heavy. It's fine with it. That's a bodybuilder myth. It's not physiologically true. But the thing is, even a lot of power lifters do a lot of lockout work with really, really heavy weights. There are guys who bench press 400 pounds who do lockout work in a rack or off of boards with 600, sometimes 700 pounds. And they're not developing necessarily major joint or tricep tendon issues. That's the thing that people need to remember. They're not developing these problems most of the time. So guys who are worried about locking out with 200 pounds or 300 pounds, think about that by comparison. It's really kind of silly. If these guys get away with it with much, much heavier weights, then why bodybuilders and stuff are worried about 200 or 300 pounds, sometimes a third or a half of the weight these guys are locking out with? Why would it? Are your joints that weak? I mean, are your joints literally less than half to a third as weak as that of a power lifter? Doesn't make any sense. And again, physiology, the joint is designed to lock out unless you are double jointed. If you're double jointed, I understand that, but that is a medical issue that most people don't have. A few people do. I've had a friend who I've had to help lift many years ago who is double jointed, and yeah, it kind of sucks. It makes certain things harder for them. But we can't really cover that in the scope of this other than, yeah, they've got to be careful about not hyperextending the elbow on their lockout. Other people aren't capable of doing that. So the question becomes, how do you train the triceps? Well, first of all, the majority of people who develop problems with their triceps is usually, again, excessive amounts of isolation work. Like with anything else, sometimes it is the isolation work that causes certain problems and inflammation in the connective tissue because people are convinced they need tricep isolation work. I'm not. It honestly depends on the individual. It really depends on the person. Everyone grows in slightly different proportions and different rates. And it's just not necessary for any person to isolate every muscle in their body. There's generally only going to be a few, even if you're going to go bodybuild, all right? There are only a few muscles in your body you need to isolate that aren't necessarily getting proper balance with everything else in your physique. It just isn't that critical to isolate everything. In fact, it can be counterproductive because it's wasting time, it's wasting energy, and sometimes it's putting too much stress on certain muscles. It should be done basically for weak points. Muscles that you feel are potential weak points, are weak points, or are lagging. That's the stuff you need to isolate. For one person, it'll be biceps and rear delts. For another guy, it'll be their side delts and their triceps. Another guy, it'll be their upper chest and their hamstrings. So you got to look at it from that perspective. Everyone's going to have different muscles that lag a little bit, and that's normal. That's totally normal. It doesn't make you weird. That's normal. But your lagging muscles are not going to be your friend's lagging muscles. You guys can't follow the same routine if you have different weak points, and that's something people need to factor in. That's why accessory work is individual. Now, people are always like, well, you can't fully develop the tricep off compound movements only. I'm going to argue that you can. And the reason they say that is purely because of the long head. Because normally if you guys look at the tricep, you've got the lateral head here, right? This one down here. You have the medial head right here. And you have the long head, this big one back here. A lot of presses, particularly chest presses, tend to emphasize the lateral and the medial head a lot more. The long head doesn't get worked as much because the long head has a stretch component, like from when you're doing this. Right? It has a stretch component, and that's part of its function, and it is hard to fully develop it without doing that. So because the other two get dominated on presses, that one can be the one that lags. So for a lot of guys, getting extra work in with their isolation work on that becomes necessary. But it isn't always necessary. And the reason I say that is because people are only looking at chest presses. But when you really think about that, that's because most people, that's what they're doing. They're doing a lot of chest presses. I'm assuming anyone who wants complete development or complete strength is probably doing some type of chest press. It's just standard in any routine, whether it's an athlete or a bodybuilder or anyone else. It's normal. Someone's doing some chest presses. So that's the problem there. But there are compound movements that put more emphasis on the long head. There are compound movements that put more emphasis on the long head. How about overhead pressing? Think about it. You're overhead pressing, right? You get that stretch right there. You feel it even in that long head. It gets stretched a bit there. There's a lot more focus on it. And you know, it stretches at the top. That's where you're really feeling that stretch in that muscle, right? Think about it. Do some overhead presses yourselves and think about what you're feeling in the triceps. When you're at the bottom, you're feeling it more down here. And as you lock out at the top, you feel it in that long head. Try it if you think I'm wrong. Feel it for yourself. It's putting a stretch on it. Well, people are like, well, I can only lock so much weight. Well, what about things like push presses? I would say that push presses out of any press that's out there are going to give you the most potential for building the long head. They can help bring up a lagging long head tremendously. The push press is an amazing exercise for that. And if you aren't push pressing and you want total, if you want to be really powerful and strong and you aren't push pressing, I really don't know what you're doing with your life. I don't know what you're doing with your gym time if you're trying to be a strong ass beast and you're not doing the push press ever. All right, you're really shortchanging yourself. It is a fantastic full body power exercise. Every strength coach agrees. It actually creates more explosiveness and acceleration in like the thighs and actually squatting does, even though it's a lighter weight as far as actually force generation or development of power. It's a fantastic exercise. It's why so many field athletes are taught to do it. That's why so many contact sport athletes do it, because they're getting a lower body work out there that has a unique training component. But the main thing is that it lets you lock out more weight at the top of an overhead press. All right, that's fantastic for developing your overall delts and shoulder girdle, but also it gives you more tricep work than a lot of overhead presses. And that's a big deal because you're locking out more weight at the top. And you're locking out more weight at the top where that most stretch is put on the long head. It can help bring that up. Another exercise that has been shown even with EMG studies to stimulate the long head, but not the other two heads. Now that's interesting because every normal tricep exercise works all the heads to some extent and usually ends up hitting these bottom two more. How about the weighted chin up? The stretch you get at the bottom, it has been found even in EMG studies that there is significant stimulation of the long head. Is it enough to bring it up if it's lagging? It's hard to say, but it can't hurt. So I would tell guys who are saying, well, my long head's lagging and I'm trying to do mostly compound movements. Are you push pressing and doing weighted chin-ups? That would be the first question I would ask you, because both of those, we have significant data showing that they'll bring up that lagging head. And you know what? They'll bring that head up without putting the same stress on your connective tissue, the negative stress that you get from certain isolation movements, something to factor in addition to the fact of look at what else they build. For people who are looking for all-around development, chin-ups are a premier bicep builder. Some studies suggest they're just as good, if not better, than curls are for biceps. They build your lats, your rear delts. Also, a lot of people aren't aware of this. Again, been confirmed with the EMG data. They significantly recruit the upper pecs. The chin up that we think of as a back and bicep exercise actually works the upper chest. The push press also works the upper chest in addition to that long head. So these are two exercises that we normally think of as big strength builders that actually put a lot of emphasis on some of these show muscles. Long head of the tricep, the upper chest. These are usually areas that lag for a lot of people. These are often areas, weak points for guys who are chasing a balanced physique, aesthetic-oriented guys, bodybuilders. Many of them struggle with the long head of their triceps and their upper chest, right? They end up having to do extra work for them. Well, these two very popular strength athlete exercises, weighted chin-ups and push presses, actually work those normal lagging areas. I mean, how nice is that? Get stronger while bringing up your weak points. That's a win-win. But is that going to be enough for everybody? No. Some people are still going to need to isolate their triceps. That's just the unfortunate world we live in. There's nobody who won't have some lagging body part somewhere, and so the triceps oftentimes still, for some guys, that long head, even doing that might be a problem. If that's you, and you know what, you already know all your presses are working the other two heads of your triceps tremendously. Nobody who is strong on the bench press and the incline bench and all that stuff has lagging heads here. All right, those don't lag on you. If you're good at the bench press, the odds of the lateral and long head lagging are slim to none. If you've been focusing hard on your chest presses, that doesn't happen. It's that long head that lags. So accordingly, any isolation movements you do need to incorporate the long head more. You need to put a heavier emphasis on them. Well, when you're doing this to your face or to your neck, you're de-emphasizing the long head and putting it right back on these. In addition to the fact that this does what? It puts inflammation on these tendons here. It puts an unnatural amount of stress on the connective tissue around the elbow that other tricep movements don't do. That's what causes the elbow pain. That's what causes that tendonitis to happen in the elbows. That's what causes tennis elbow in people who lift. Those exercises right there. And people are thinking, no, I lock out on the presses, that's what's causing it. So I'm wrapping up and I'm doing my presses and everything, when actually it was your isolation work doing it all this time. So if you're doing isolation work, you need to get rid of that. Isolation work in which you have extension of the shoulders. See my shoulder? Watch my arm. See? If I don't bend the elbow, you see the other part of it? Look what's happening there. All right, behind the head on a laying press or laying skull crusher, or with dumbbells, even better. Turn the hands in, do them with dumbbells, all the way back here. It puts a stretch and a focus on the long head. That's the head that lags the most. In addition to the fact that it doesn't put that stress here directly over the face on that connective tissue. So that's a win-win. If you're going to do a tricep isolation exercise, you should be doing one that brings up the most likely head to be lagging, and that's not going to cause you tendonitis, right? So if you do any tricep isolation movements that you need to do, make sure that you do that. They're focused on the long head. They always de-emphasize the stretch on those tendons there, the things that cause you pain over time. So you should do every isolation movement for your triceps in that manner. Now, you shouldn't be needing multiple tricep isolation movements either. That's the other thing to factor in. If you're doing all this compound work, odds are you only have one area of the tricep that's lagging. And odds are it's going to be the long head. So your tricep exercises should focus on that. And if the other two heads are lagging, you shouldn't need to isolate them. I'm going to recommend that you get stronger on your pressing. Get stronger on your bench press. Get stronger on your dumbbell presses. Get stronger on your weighted dips. You do that, those are going to come up anyways. Right? Any argument there? If they're a weak link for you, they're going to have to grow if you get stronger on those. There's no alternative. It's just simply going to happen. That's the fastest way to bring up a lagging lateral or medial head. Get stronger on pressing. Focus more and more on your pressing, and it'll sort it right out. So, for people who didn't understand how to train the triceps and how to do it injury-free based on what I said, hopefully that should clear things right up. Problem solved. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.